Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. The lighthouse keeper's log. I never wanted to be a lighthouse keeper. The isolation, the monotony, the responsibility, none of it appealed to me. But after my wife Sarah died, I couldn't bear to be around people anymore. Their sympathetic glances, their awkward attempts at conversation, their inevitable questions about how I was holding up. I couldn't stand it. So when I saw the job posting for a lighthouse keeper on Black Rock Island, 50 miles off the Maine coast, it seemed like the perfect escape. The lighthouse service was desperate. 3 keepers had quit in the past year. Something about the isolation getting to them, the administrator said during my interview. He seemed surprised when I told him isolation was exactly what I was looking for. Well, Mr. Thorne, I should warn you that Blackrock can be challenging, he said, shuffling through my paperwork. Even with modern automation, we still need someone out there. The systems fail more often than they should. And the weather. He trailed off, looking out his office window at the clear blue sky as if he could see storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The weather can be unpredictable. I told him I didn't mind bad weather. After losing Sarah to cancer, what was a little rain and wind? It's not just that, he said, leaning forward. There's something about that place. The locals have stories, ghost stories, I asked, almost amused. He didn't smile. Something like that, ships that shouldn't be there, lights where there shouldn't be lights, voices in the fog. I don't believe in ghosts, I told him. Neither did the last 3 keepers, he replied. I signed the contract that afternoon. The boat dropped me off on a cold October morning. The island was smaller than I expected, barely a quarter-mile across, mostly granite rock with patches of stubborn grass. The lighthouse itself was a classic New England design, a white tower connected to a modest keeper's house, both structures showing their age but solid against the constant battering of the Atlantic. Captain Mills, who'd ferried me across, helped unload my supplies. Radio check-in is twice daily, he reminded me. 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., don't miss it. If something happens to the radio, use the satellite phone, but only for emergencies. He glanced up at the lighthouse, then back to me. Weather's turning, might not be back for 2 weeks, maybe more if the storms hit like they're saying. I've got enough supplies, I assured him, and I've got nowhere else to be. He studied me for a moment. Most folks don't last out here, Mr. Thorne, not because of the work or the isolation, it's the... He hesitated. The ghosts, I suggested with a half-smile. He didn't return the smile, just keep the light on. And keep that radio on too, whole time, even when you're not checking in. Why? Sometimes you hear things, important things. He wouldn't elaborate further. After Mills left, I spent the day settling in. The keeper's quarters were sparse but comfortable. A small kitchen, a living area with a desk and radio equipment, a bedroom, and a bathroom with surprisingly good water pressure. The lighthouse itself was mostly automated now, but I still needed to perform daily maintenance checks and be ready to take manual control if the systems failed. That first night, I slept better than I had in months. The constant sound of the waves against the rocks was soothing, like white noise that blocked out everything else, including my thoughts. For the first time since Sarah died, I didn't dream about hospital rooms or funeral homes. I didn't dream at all. The next morning, I established my routine. Check the lighthouse systems, make breakfast, log the weather conditions, perform any necessary maintenance, read, make lunch, walk the perimeter of the island, make dinner, check the systems again, radio in, read some more, sleep. Repeat. It was exactly what I needed, simple, predictable, alone. For the first week, everything was fine. The weather was clear, the systems functioned perfectly, and I began to think the administrator and Captain Mills had been exaggerating the difficulties of the position. Maybe the other keepers had just been weak-minded, unable to handle the solitude that I found so comforting. On the 8th day, the fog rolled in. I'd seen fog before, of course. Living in New England, it's as common as complaining about the Patriots. But this fog was different. It came in suddenly, not gradually as fog usually does. One moment I was walking along the western edge of the island under clear skies, and the next I was enveloped in a dense, white mist that seemed to swallow all sound except the foghorn's mournful cry. I made my way back to the lighthouse, moving carefully over the rocks. Inside, I checked the weather radar. Nothing indicated fog in the area. Clear skies for 100 miles in every direction. That's not possible, I muttered to myself, looking out the window at the wall of white that surrounded the lighthouse. I radioed in early. Blackrock to Coast Guard, do you copy? Over. Static then. Coast Guard to Blackrock, we copy. This isn't your scheduled check-in, Thorne. Everything all right? Over. I'm experiencing heavy fog conditions, but it's not showing on the radar. Can you confirm? Over. A pause. Radar shows clear skies at your location, Blackrock. No fog registered. Over. I looked out the window again. The fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. That's impossible. I can't see more than 10 feet in any direction. Over. Another longer pause. Stand by, Blackrock. I waited, watching the fog swirl and eddy around the lighthouse. After several minutes, the radio crackled again. BlackRock, this is Commander Hayes. I understand you're reporting fog conditions. Over. Affirmative. Heavy fog, visibility near zero, but the radar's working fine. Thorn, Hayes interrupted. There's no fog in your area, not according to our instruments, not according to satellite imagery, not according to the 3 vessels currently within 20 miles of your position. Over. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. Then what am I seeing? Over. I couldn't tell you, but I suggest you stay inside until it passes. And Thorn, keep the light on, no matter what. Over. Understood. Over and out. I hung up the radio mic and stared out at the impossible fog. As if sensing my gaze, it seemed to press closer to the windows, thickening until I couldn't see anything beyond a uniform white wall. The foghorn continued its regular bellowing, the sound somehow muffled despite its volume. As night fell, the fog remained, illuminated now by the lighthouse beam as it cut through the darkness. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not just the fog that shouldn't exist, but something deeper, something fundamental. The radio had been silent since my conversation with Commander Hayes. I kept it on as instructed, but there was nothing but the occasional burst of static, until midnight. I was dozing in the chair when a voice cut through the white noise so suddenly that I nearly knocked over my coffee cup. Help us, I grabbed the mic. This is BlackRock Lighthouse, do you copy? Over. Nothing but static. This is BlackRock Lighthouse, I repeated. If you can hear me, please identify yourself. Over. The static cleared for just a moment. SS Meridian, position unknown, fog, then silence. I tried again and again but received no response. I checked the shipping registers on my tablet. There was no vessel named SS Meridian currently at sea. I radioed the Coast Guard. Coast Guard, this is BlackRock. I just received a distress call from a vessel identifying itself as the SS Meridian. Over. BlackRock, Coast Guard, can you repeat that? Over. I received a distress call from the SS Meridian. They mentioned fog in an unknown position. Over. A long pause. BlackRock, there is no vessel with that designation in your area. All ships within 50 miles have reported in and are accounted for. Over. I heard it clearly, I insisted. Check the wider registry. Over. Another pause. BlackRock, the SS Meridian was a passenger liner that sank in 1912, 117 miles from your current position. Over. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not possible, I just heard them. Over. Negative, BlackRock, you did not hear the SS Meridian. Suggest you get some sleep. Maintain your scheduled check-ins. Over and out, I sat there, mic still in hand, as the implications sank in. Either I was hallucinating, or I had just received a distress call from a ship that had been on the ocean floor for over a century. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed by the radio, waiting to hear the voice again, but there was nothing but static. The fog remained, thick and impenetrable, pressing against the lighthouse like a living thing trying to find a way in. In the morning, I checked the weather radar again, still clear. I radioed in at the scheduled time and made no mention of the Meridian. Commander Hayes sounded relieved, though he did ask about the fog. Still there, I told him. Visibility 0, over. Instruments still show clear conditions, he replied. But the satellite imagery is unclear, some kind of interference. Just keep the light on. Thorn, over. The fog persisted for 3 more days. I stayed inside, monitoring the radio, checking and rechecking the lighthouse systems. The automated mechanisms were functioning perfectly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the light itself. It seemed dimmer somehow, struggling to penetrate the unnatural fog. On the 4th night, I heard the voices again. It started as a whisper beneath the static, so faint I thought I was imagining it. But then it grew stronger, a chorus of overlapping voices, all calling for help, all mentioning fog and confusion and unknown positions. I wrote down every ship name I could make out. SS Meridian, 1912 RMS Lusitania, 1915 USS Cyclops, 1918 SS Cotopaxi, 1925 SS Morro Castle, 1934 and more, dozens more, ships lost across decades, across centuries, all somehow broadcasting on my radio frequency, all trapped in a fog that didn't exist. I didn't report these transmissions to the Coast Guard. I knew what they would say, that I was hallucinating, that isolation was getting to me, just like it had gotten to the previous keepers. Instead, I began researching. The tablet's internet connection was slow but functional, and I spent hours reading about each ship I'd heard, looking for patterns, for explanations. What I found chilled me to the bone. Each vessel had disappeared in clear weather. Each had reported unusual fog conditions before contact was lost, and each had been within 200 miles of Blackrock Island when they vanished. On the 7th day of the fog, I saw the first ship. I was in the lantern room cleaning the glass when movement caught my eye. Through a momentary thinning in the fog, I saw it, a massive passenger liner, its hull black against the gray mist, moving slowly about a quarter-mile from the island. Its design was distinctly early 20th century. As I watched, frozen in shock, the fog closed in again and the ship vanished from view. I ran down to the radio room and grabbed the binoculars, then hurried outside, scanning the fog-shrouded waters. Nothing, but as I turned to go back inside, I heard it, the distant sound of a ship's whistle, mournful and ancient, followed by the faint strains of music. A waltz, I thought, played by an orchestra. That night the radio voices were clearer than ever, and now I could hear more than just distress calls. I heard conversations, laughter, music, the everyday sounds of ships at sea, all of them lost, all of them dead. "They're trapped," I whispered to the empty room. "Somehow they're trapped." The next morning the fog was still there, but different, thinner in some places, thicker in others, constantly shifting and moving like something alive. Through gaps in the mist I caught glimpses of more ships, vessels from every era, from wooden sailing ships to modern freighters, all silent, all moving with unnatural slowness through waters that should have been empty. I radioed the Coast Guard. "Blackrock to Coast Guard, I'm seeing ships, dozens of them, over. Coast Guard to Blackrock, radar shows no vessels within 20 miles of your position, over. They're not modern ships," I tried to explain. They're ships that were lost, shipwrecks. I can see them through the fog, over." Silence then. "Blackrock, this is Commander Hayes. We're sending a boat, ETA tomorrow morning, weather permitting. Suggest you get some rest." Over. "The fog, there is no fog, Thorn, not according to any of our instruments, but we're coming to get you, just keep the light on, over and out." I hung up the mic, knowing they thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But the ships were there, I could see them, hear them, even smell them sometimes when the wind shifted. Coal smoke and salt water and something else, something old and wrong. That night the fog pressed closer to the lighthouse than ever before, so thick against the windows that it blocked out all light except the beam from the lantern room. The radio voices had become a constant chorus, no longer just distress calls but conversations, arguments, laughter, screams. The sounds of 100 doomed voyages playing out simultaneously. I sat in the dark, listening, trying to make sense of what was happening, and then, just after midnight, the radio went silent, all at once, as if someone had thrown a switch. The sudden absence of noise was more terrifying than the cacophony had been. In the silence I heard a new sound, footsteps on the rocks outside, slow, deliberate footsteps moving toward the lighthouse. I grabbed the flashlight and went to the window, trying to see through the fog, nothing but white. The footsteps continued, closer now, accompanied by a new sound, the soft lapping of water, as if whoever was approaching had just emerged from the sea. A knock at the door, soft, almost hesitant. "Who's there?" I called, my voice sounding thin and frightened. No answer. Another knock, more insistent this time. I should have ignored it. I should have barricaded the door, hidden in the lantern room, waited for morning and the Coast Guard boat. But something compelled me to approach the door. Curiosity, maybe, or the maddening isolation of the past week, or simply the human need to confront the unknown. I opened the door, the fog swirled and parted, revealing a figure standing on the threshold. A woman, her clothes and hair dripping wet, her skin pale as moonlight. For one impossible moment, I thought it was Sarah. But then she stepped forward and I saw her face clearly, not my wife, but someone else, someone with eyes as dark and fathomless as the ocean at night. "You need to turn off the light," she said, her voice soft but carrying an authority that made my skin crawl. "It's drawing them in. Who are you?" I demanded. "How did you get here?" She ignored my questions. "The light, it's been calling them for centuries, drawing them off course into the fog, into the trap." "What trap?" "What are you talking about?" She looked past me, up toward the lantern room where the beam continued its steady rotation. "They think it's guiding them to safety, but it's not. It never was." I backed away from her, suddenly afraid. "You're not real. None of this is real." She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "We're as real as you are, Keeper, as real as this island, as real as the light that won't let us rest." She gestured toward the fog, and I saw them then, shapes moving in the mist, dozens of them, hundreds, people of all ages and eras, all with the same pale skin, the same dripping clothes, the same dark, empty eyes. "The lost," she said simply, "the ones who never made it home." I slammed the door shut and locked it, then ran to the radio room. "Coast Guard, this is Blackrock, emergency. There are people on the island, hundreds of them. They're trying to get into the lighthouse. Over. Nothing but static. Coast Guard, do you copy? This is an emergency. Over." The static resolved into a voice, but not the Coast Guard. A man's voice, old-fashioned in its cadence. "Captain's log, SS Meridian, October 15, 1912. Fog has surrounded us for 3 days now. Navigation instruments useless. Spotted a light in the distance, perhaps a lighthouse. Altering course to investigate." Then a woman's voice, more modern. "Mayday, mayday, this is the private yacht Calliope. We've lost all navigation in this fog. There's a light, we're heading toward it. If anyone can hear this," voice after voice, ship after ship, all drawn by the light, all lost in the fog that wasn't there. A pounding on the door now, not just knocking but pounding, as if dozens of fists were hammering at once. I ran to the lantern room, climbed the spiral stairs, reached the top, and froze. The fog had penetrated the lantern room. Impossible, the room was sealed, weathertight, but the fog was there, swirling around the massive Fresnel lens, dimming the powerful beam that should have been cutting through the night. And in the fog, faces, hundreds of faces, pressing against the glass, watching me with dark, empty eyes. Men, women, children, the lost, the drowned, the forgotten. The woman from the doorway was there too, somehow inside the sealed room, standing next to the lens. "Turn it off," she said again. "End the cycle." "What cycle? What are you talking about?" "The light calls us. It has always called us, but it's not a beacon of safety, it's a lure, a trap. It draws us in, then confuses us, disorients us. We crash, we sink, we die. And then we join the others, waiting in the fog, watching for the next ship, the next victims." "That's not what lighthouses do," I protested. "They warn ships away from danger, they save lives." "Not this one," she said, her voice sad. "This one was built wrong or built right, but for the wrong purpose. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that you can end it. Turn off the light." "Let us go." I looked at the control panel. It would be easy, just flip the master switch, plunge the lantern into darkness. But everything I knew about being a lighthouse keeper, everything I'd been taught, screamed against it. "I can't," I said. "My job is to keep the light on, to protect ships. The light doesn't protect, Keeper, it condemns." She moved closer, her wet clothes leaving puddles on the floor. "How many keepers before you have heard our voices? Seen our ships? How many have fled, unable to bear the knowledge of what they're part of?" I thought of the 3 keepers who had quit in the past year, of Captain Mills's warnings, of Commander Hayes's insistence that I keep the light on no matter what. "They know," I realized aloud. "The Coast Guard, the Lighthouse Service, they know about this." She nodded. "Some suspect, some know. Most choose not to believe, even when the evidence is before them. Humans are good at ignoring what they don't want to see." The pounding on the outer door was louder now, more frantic. The faces pressed closer against the glass, their eyes pleading, accusing. "If I turn off the light," I asked, "what happens to them, to you?" "We go where we were meant to go before the light diverted us. Where that is, I don't know. But it has to be better than this endless waiting, this half-existence." "And what happens to me?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I looked out at the fog-shrouded ocean, at the ghost ships moving silently through waters that had claimed them decades or centuries ago. I thought about cycles and traps and the cruelty of false hope. Then I thought about Sarah, about how in her final days she had begged for an end to her suffering. How I had refused, selfishly, wanting to keep her with me just a little longer, even as she drifted further away, trapped between life and death. I walked to the control panel and placed my hand on the master switch. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure if I was speaking to the ghosts or to the Coast Guard or to myself. I flipped the switch. The lantern went dark. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the fog began to move, not drifting with the wind, but flowing like a current, streaming away from the lighthouse, out toward the open sea. The faces in the glass faded, their expressions changing from desperation to something like peace. The woman stood beside me, already becoming transparent. "Thank you, Keeper," she whispered. "What happens now?" I asked again. She smiled, a genuine smile this time, reaching up to touch my face with fingers that felt like the memory of raindrops. "Now we go, and so do you." She faded away, and with her went the fog, the faces, the pounding at the door. I was alone in the dark lantern room, the massive lens silent and still before me. I made my way down to the radio room, picked up the mic. "Blackrock to Coast Guard, the light is out. I've turned it off. I'm not turning it back on." Over, static, then Commander Hayes's voice, tight with anger or fear. "Thorne, what have you done? Turn that light back on immediately." Over. "No," I said simply. "It's over. The cycle is broken. Over." "Thorne, listen to me. You don't understand what you've done. That light isn't just for ships. It's—" I turned off the radio. I didn't need to hear the rest. I understood enough. I packed a small bag, some food, water, a flashlight, my tablet. Then I went outside. The night was clear now, no fog, just stars and a quarter moon providing enough light to see by. The island seemed smaller somehow, the rocks more weathered, the keeper's house more dilapidated than I remembered. I walked to the eastern edge of the island and sat on a boulder, watching the horizon, waiting for dawn. I didn't know if the Coast Guard would still come for me, or what would happen if they did. I didn't know if I'd broken some ancient pact, released some terrible force, or simply freed a few hundred trapped souls. All I knew was that for the first time since Sarah died, I felt at peace. The weight of grief and guilt that had driven me to this isolated rock had lifted, replaced by a strange, calm acceptance. As the first light of dawn touched the eastern sky, I saw them, ships on the horizon, dozens of them, sailing away from Blackrock Island. Not modern vessels, but ships from every era of human seafaring, their sails and smokestacks silhouetted against the rising sun. Leading them was a massive passenger liner, its profile unmistakable even at a distance. The SS Meridian finally completing its voyage. I watched until they disappeared over the horizon. Then I stood, shouldered my bag, and walked back to the lighthouse. The door stood open, though I was certain I'd closed it. Inside, everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, as if the place had been abandoned for months, not hours. On the desk in the radio room was a logbook I hadn't seen before, its leather cover cracked and faded with age. I opened it to the first page and read the neat, handwritten entry, October 17, 1847. I have taken the position of keeper at the newly constructed Blackrock Lighthouse. The locals are suspicious of this place. They say the island has always drawn ships to their doom, even before the light. I dismiss such superstitions. A lighthouse keeper must believe in the power of light to save, not condemn. I flipped to the last written page. November 3, 1847. The fog has returned. With it come the voices, the apparitions. I understand now what we have done. The light doesn't fight the island's hunger, it serves it. It calls the ships in. God forgive me for the lives I have helped condemn. I cannot bear this knowledge. I will not. The light must go dark. The rest of the pages were blank, waiting. I found a pen in the desk drawer and wrote my own entry. October 18, 2023. The light is dark, the ships have gone, the cycle is broken. I don't know what happens next, but I am at peace with whatever comes. I closed the logbook and placed it back on the desk. Then I sat in the old wooden chair and waited, watching through the window as the sun climbed higher over an empty, peaceful sea. In the distance, I heard the sound of a boat engine, coming closer, coming for me. I smiled and closed my eyes, ready for whatever came next.